One night, a dead angel fell from heaven. The corpse destroyed the car it fell onto, as the tremendous velocity behind it was proportional to the interminable height from which it fell. The resultant noise naturally created a great clamor and commotion among the people living on the street the car was parked on, even at the early hour at which this occurred. The corpse was virtually liquefied, having fallen from above the sky, but medical examiners were able to identify the organs and tissue which remained intact as human, or humanoid. They were, however, unable to account for the broken and incontestably organic appendages bearing an unmistakable resemblance to gigantic bird wings issuing from what had once been a back. By the time any government learned of the event, it was too late to keep knowledge of it from circulating across the globe, as crowds of people had captured and shared images and videos of the shattered corpse and vehicle on cellular devices long before any legal or medical official made it to the scene. Any attempts to deny the happening or to keep it from becoming common knowledge would have quickly become superfluous, though. The fall of this first angel was soon followed by another, in another populous area in a different part of the world, and then by another, and so on, in growing number and frequency. It wasn't long before seeking shelter beneath a solid structure became a necessity for the avoidance of death or severe injury, as the surface of the earth was being pelted with the corpses of angels falling from heaven onto growing piles of each other. Humanity quickly degenerated into panicked pre-civilization under the impression that the end of the world was in progress, and those who believed this were essentially correct, at least as far as humanity is concerned. What they didn't realize was that as their world ended, the planet they and their genetic predecessors had inhabited for so many thousands of years was steadily being reclaimed by a race of beings predating the dawn of human life on the planet Earth. This pre-human race had come eventually to be known to the human sphere as demons, and lived beneath the surface of the earth in a subterranean world given many names, one of the most prominent being Hell. When the first Homo sapiens were created and placed on Earth by the entity they called God, the only structures were those which had been constructed by the natural and elemental forces which first formed and governed the young planet, and those fashioned from the raw materials of the earth by demons and the pre-human races created by God, in order to test which traits and features would be most suitable and useful to a species which could come to dominate this new world. The demons were cautious of these pre-humans as they were cautious of the other animals which inhabited their world, because like those animals, pre-humans could be erratic and violent. The demon world was aware and observant, though, of humanity's evolution, and when Homo sapiens began to show signs of intelligence and reason, demons decided to make a peace offering to the first human couple and their tribe of children in the form of a fruit which would bestow upon them the instant knowledge and capability of demonic speech and language. God, who created through the power of his own words, was alarmed and offended, perceiving that his most advanced creation to date had committed the hubris of becoming more like him and challenging his undisputed divinity by trusting in the demon's benevolence and accepting the hitherto unknown gift of speech. Although God was fully capable of sending armed angels to earth to prevent the first man and woman from testing this fruit of knowledge, he wanted to see just how faithful his newest creation would be to its celestial origins without any awareness of them. However, when the parents of the human race found the results of the fruit to be so favorable that they decided to share it amongst their progeny, God could bear no more of this combined insult to his omnipotence, and rained burning angels of destruction and castigation down upon the ungrateful face of the guilty earth. Neither the first man and woman nor their children had ever known persecution until witnessing the treatment of their predecessors on earth by God's punishing angels, fashioned bodily, like humans themselves, in God's own image. As a result of the profound effect the spectacle wrought upon the minds of the first children, to this day human beings make war and commit other limitless atrocities upon each other. The demons, who were still unaware of the existence of God, but only that an unknown and hostile force was invading the earth from the sky, spread this to each other across the world as rapidly as they could. Because the earth had never before been invaded, the demons' only weapons at that time were intended for hunting animals. Standing and fighting the angels could only have proven futile, so demonic civilization retreated into the cavernous and fiery womb of its mother, the earth. Here the demons began forging weapons of war, so that they would be ready to defend against future assaults. They also sent word of the assault they'd suffered to their allies of the Milky Way's other civilizations, manipulating the tectonic plates comprising the Earth's terrain in order to send vibrations far enough into the vacuum surrounding the Earth to be heard on other planets. The demons' interplanetary neighbors sent light signals to the skies above the areas of the Earth most obscure and inhospitable to human life, and thereby shared with the demons what knowledge they'd gleaned of the cosmic force known as God. God's intolerance for agencies of creation which were not his own grew from his frustration at the failure of his own attempts to replicate himself. God's first creation was intended to be a companion God, but the result fell so short of his expectations that all of God's following attempts at creation were beings over whom he intended to reign and hold sway as a superior monarch. These subsequent species continued to disappoint God, however. Despite the many forms he created, and despite the advancements to which each of these incarnations of life evolved, none were able to sustain themselves indefinitely, and all of the planets to which God came to bring life were eventually and invariably destroyed as their inhabitants destroyed themselves. Millennia of catastrophic failure and the obsession to create successfully inured God to the awareness that the creatures he created destroyed worlds which existed before he came to them. God's compulsion convinced him that any life existing on a planet which he did not himself create was not life, but rather a cosmic accident, and that neither he nor the beings he created need feel any compunction from forcibly replacing it in the pursuit of expansion. In order to clear the way when necessary, God manifested armies of angels, corporeal representations of his will. In his heavenly sphere, God traveled from planet to planet, ending the worlds which preceded his own. The demons surmised from this collective intelligence that Earth was now the site of God's latest experiment, but by the time they became fully aware through communication with their planetary neighbors of what had been done to them as a species, humanity had used the demons' gift of spoken language to civilize itself and advance. Though the twisting of the minds of the first children was coming to fruition all over the world, the advent of human civilization was evolving at the same time, and works were being accomplished on Earth of which the demons could never have conceived on their own. The demon world harbored hope that humanity would not follow the rest of God's creations down the path of self-destruction, dragging the Earth behind them. The demons chose not to test their newly crafted weapons against the machinery of war developed by humanity over its first few centuries of life. They also realized that a siege war against the angelic forces of God could only prove unsuccessful unless they requested the aid of the other planets in a conflict which they themselves did not yet want to initiate. And so humanity flourished for thousands of years. Eventually, however, the irresponsibly self-destructive nature inherent in all of God's creatures slowly got the better of even the most civilized of humanity, and progressively took control over the course of human destiny. It was when manufactured chemicals punctured a growing hole in the layer of gases, which shield the Earth's terrain from the full intensity of the sun's rays, that the demon world agreed unanimously that it was time for them to take back the Earth while there was still an Earth left. Distress signals were communicated to the societies of other planets, and human sightings of unidentified objects in the sky increased as military vessels from across the galaxy were sent to the outskirts of the Earth's orbit to seek out and destroy the sphere of God. The reign of dead angels was the result of God's attempt to protect himself from the host of interplanetary warships massing upon his sphere surrounding the Earth, and growing as word of his work spread throughout the sentient cosmos. What was left of the human race had, by this point, taken to eating and burning the angels in order to stay alive. But as all major water sources were now overflowing with corpses and refuse, the impossibility of hydration had all but done the demons' work of eradicating the few remnants of humanity. This was accomplished without incident, and angels stopped falling from the sky. The extraterrestrial assault on God's sphere was over, although no subsequent communications with the demons' allies confirmed any direct confrontation with God himself. The earth, however, was now free of his influence, and the demon's process of recovery and renewal began.